everybody. Better Spaces is a health and a happiness solution for today's hybrid workplace. My name is Dr. Paul Kachowa, and I've partnered with them to bring you an easy and educational workday session. Today's session is 3 drills. There might be more, but we're going to go over some drills to improve the efficiency of your running and help you run longer with less effort. So a little bit about me. I'm a physical therapist and owner of PAR5 Physical Therapy here in Randolph, New Jersey. And I have my doctorate in physical therapy from Mercy College and a BS in exercise physiology from Rutgers. I'm also an orthopedic clinical specialist and a certified golf medical professional from the Titleist Performance Institute. So if you have any questions, feel free to use our chat here. We're trying to make this as helpful and informative as possible. So we're going to make this interactive. Without further ado, I'm going to pull up my slides here, and we're going to go over 3 drills to improve your running efficiency and reduce your injuries. All right, so just like every other talk that I've done, every other class, because I'm a medical professional, I have to put this disclaimer up, because the little aches and pains and the issues that you might be having, these exercises, these drills, these videos that we're going to go over, these exercises, they're going to be helpful and they're geared towards a broad population. But if you're dealing with something specific, make sure that you're getting a thorough physical exam so you can get to the root cause of your problem. All righty? So with running, the big thing that we have to do is understand what a stride is and what's the most efficient way to get from point A to point B. So this picture right here, we have the anatomy of a stride, right? And we have on the right hand or the left hand side, we have the red marks here where if there's a lot of heel strike or a midfoot strike, there's a lot of joint impact. Let me make this even bigger. And you could see how it creates more excess strain on the joints and there's more strain on your knee. And then we have the thing in the middle, the green, which is the running pose. The running pose is where we're balanced on the mid to forefoot. And the yellow is basically the momentum that brings us forward, the falling forward. And then the end phase of the stride, when you're about to pick your foot up off the ground, is the pull. All right, so this thing here, and a lot of research has gone into running. It's probably one of the most researched sports or activities there is, that it really doesn't matter. I read the study that it really doesn't matter what hits the ground first, whether it's your heel or your midfoot or your forefoot, doesn't matter. But what really matters is where that strike occurs. A lot of times I see runners in my clinic here that have issues, foot, knee, ankle, hip pain, and we put them on the treadmill and they feel like they're landing on their forefoot or they're landing on their heel, right? So we'll take a look at that. But what really matters is where that happens. We never want that foot strike, whatever that is, that initial contact to happen in front of our center of gravity. So that's where that red lines are, right? So the foot impacts in front of our center of gravity. We want that impact to be closer to below our center of gravity as much as possible. So what happens is that when our foot plants on the ground, we're not creating like a brake. We're not hitting the brake and then trying to transition our body weight over that foot, where on the right side of the picture here, it's mostly just getting the foot on the ground and falling forward and using momentum to help us efficiently propel ourselves forward, right? So another thing that we could talk about is a thing called cadence. So cadence is something that I feel is the easiest way to change the way that you are running. Now, it doesn't matter if you're a slow runner or a fast runner, whether you have like a 4-minute mile or a 20-minute mile, doesn't matter. The research shows that the ideal cadence, which is how many times each foot touches the ground, is 180 steps per minute. So what I do is I take my clients on the treadmill and I use a metronome. You could use it on a smartphone or whatever, it doesn't matter. There's a bunch of apps that are metronomes that you use them for music. But we're going to tap out. There's always a feature on these metronomes, tap out how many times your foot hits the ground. And while they're running on the treadmill, and I'll typically have them warm up, so maybe about 3 to 4 minutes into a normal pace run that they have, I'll tap out how many times their foot hits the ground. And if that cadence is usually what I see is below 160. Sometimes it'll be 150, even the slowest is like 120. The slower the cadence, or the lower that number is, the longer your foot spends on the ground. So the more time your foot spends on the ground, the more ground reaction force we have, that feedback or that impact, right? The less time your foot is on the ground, the less ground reaction force, the less shock or stress into the joints. And the other thing too is, with a higher cadence, you're less likely to impact too far in front of you or forward of your center of gravity. So 180 beats or 180 steps per minute is ideal. I put the BPM up because if you're a runner that listens to music, they have several playlists online, or they have songs that are set at 180 beats per minute. So if you can run at that pace, at that beat, or go along with the music, that'll help reduce your overstriding out in front, again, not impacting in front of your center of gravity, and also minimizing your time that your foot is on the ground. The other thing that happens too is that when we start to increase our cadence here, our cadence number, is that we have less vertical displacement. So, I'm driving, it's summer, and I'm driving on the road, and every time I see a runner running on the side of the road, I'm always looking at their gait, right? So you can tell if there's going to be a lot of ground reaction force and stress into the joints, the more vertical displacement there is. So if a person's head is bobbing up and down more than 5 millimeters, that's like half a centimeter, then that indicates to me that, yeah, there's probably some things that we can change to improve their efficiency and to reduce that vertical displacement. Because you think about it, the more that up vertical displacement you have, the more shock you have as your body goes down. So again, higher cadence, spend less time on the ground, and then vertical displacement starts to minimize. It decreases less than 4 millimeters and just kind of glide over the ground. All right, so there's a couple things that we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to change my camera here. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is what happens with single leg stance. So when you're running, you're going to spend a split second in single leg stance. All right, so I'm going to kick off my shoe, and so you can kind of see what I mean first, because I want to make sure that I feel what a good foot position, good structure feels like. The first thing is, and this is our first drill, is single leg stance to tripod foot. So the tripod foot is when the heel, the knuckle of the pinky toe, and the knuckle of the big toe, those 3 points remain in contact on the ground. So I'm going to back up so you can see. We want to make sure that those 3 points of contact are on the ground. And if you kind of roll your ankle in, roll your ankle out, or push your knee in, push your knee out, you'll feel how the pressure can change in that tripod, those 3 points of contact, heel, big toe, and pinky. We want to get into a position where we feel that the weight is evenly distributed between the 3. And we don't want to crunch up the toes, right? So we want to keep our foot as relaxed as possible and see if we can kind of maintain that tripod foot, and then gradually take the weight off by lifting your other leg up, all right? And we see, okay, can your knee, your hip, all the musculature in your pelvis here and your core balance you over that tripod foot, all right? So that's our exercise number 1, right? So that's very simple to see, can we hold that for at least 10 seconds with a good posture, a foot posture? Now, we could start to increase the intensity of this exercise or this drill by bringing that knee up higher. The higher this goes, the more challenging it is, because our center of gravity starts to raise, our balance point changes, and then we have to really engage this side here. Now, oftentimes I'll have people come in and I'll test their single leg stance, and it looks like this. I'll show you from the side. As soon as they start to bend one knee and that other knee starts to get to hip height, they start to do this. They start to get really short. This hip stays bent. What we want to do is really make sure that we engage the glute, stay nice and tall, get that tripod foot and drive that knee above hip height if we can, or at least hip height, and engage this glute so that we don't have any bend of this hip or that knee. All right, so that's single leg stance. Now, once we can kind of accomplish those points, tripod foot, engage glute, knee to hip height, we're gonna try and even challenge us to change it a little bit more dynamic. Where we take our arms, bend your elbows 90 degrees, and then just start to swing, right? We're activating the glute and do our arm swing like we're running, right? So what's your arm movement as you're running? That's the thing that happens mechanically as you're stepping. We have this rotation that happens in the torso. Your arms are going one way and your legs are going the other way, right? So we have this alternating pattern here above and below. We want to make sure that as we're doing that tripod foot, engaging that core, can we maintain that posture and balance, very difficult, as we start to move the arm. Okay, so we want to have the core engaged, we want to have the glute engaged, we want to have all that stuff, all right? So that's our drill for that. So single leg stance, we can kind of move up from there, any type of variation and progressively increasing the intensity or difficulty. Now, the next thing is a leg pull drill. So this is probably one of the hardest exercises that people can do. I have my runners come in, and it's a very hard concept to grasp because it's based on a running method called the pose method. And the pose method is kind of like an extension of that first slide where we had that position where as we're running, we're in this single leg stance and our foot strike is directly below our center of gravity. And by the way, if we're running on solid ground, we always want to have a little bit of a lean, this forward trunk lean about 10 to 15 degrees. And then we have a slight knee bend, and then our foot makes contact directly below our center of gravity. So that's a pose method. Now the leg pull drill, you're going to use a wall, and you're going to hold onto the wall, you're going to turn around, and then get into this lean forward position, right? So we're going to lean forward, have that 10 to 15 degree forward lean, and then we're going to have a pose, a position that would look like if our foot is on the ground and we're running. So we never want to kind of run with our knee kind of locked out, right? So we want to have a soft knee and a little bit of forward lean from the ankle, right? And then from this position, I have this other leg pulled up in what's called a figure 4. So if you could see from the side view here, my shin is pretty much like horizontal, right? And my legs create this figure 4 shape, all right? So as we're pulling up this leg, we don't want to pull backwards like this where the knee stays down, or pull up where the knee stays up. If we're sprinting, sure, we want to have that hip drive, right? There's a lot more forward lean to that. Sprinting is different than just regular running or jogging. So we want to make sure that our pull is vertical. It's almost like just pulling the shin and the heel up using a little bit of 50% hip, 50% hamstring. So a little bit of hip flexor. So this is be all hip flexor. This will be all hamstring. We want to go 50% of that. So that shin, that ankle almost just comes up the other leg until we get to this figure 4 position. So that's the side view. Now, because I have the wall here, part of my back, we're going to get into that position. Here's our figure 4 pose. And I mentioned earlier this idea of vertical displacement. We want to minimize the amount of vertical displacement. So we're not hopping as we're running. So with the leg pull drill, the focus is on the leg that's on the ground, or my right leg in this position. What I want to do is really focus in on that. With this leg up here, I set that angle, figure 4, fingertips on the wall, and I'm just going to pull this right leg up to the position that my left leg is in, right? And I'm going to try and do that without hopping or jumping onto the other leg. So a lot of common faults are this, and then you feel like you're going to fall over, and then we hop, and then we do this. And then there's that vertical displacement where you're pushing off of the leg to get to the other leg. We don't want that. We just want the pull. So the standing leg We're just going to pull that quick as we can to that figure 4 position, the same position that my left leg is in. I'm going to pull my right leg up, right heel up, left heel up, right heel up, left heel up, right heel up, left heel up, right? So I'm going to try and do that with that forward lean, fingertips touching the wall. And I'm going to try and do that with a very minimal vertical displacement. So you can get up and try that out. It's kind of a difficult concept because you're worried that if you concentrate on just pulling this leg that's on the ground, you're going to fall over. But this will automatically, trust me, it'll go down. Don't worry about it. You want to try and get to that position on both sides. All righty, so we got the leg pull drill. We have the tripod foot. What else? The core engagement, the arm swing. So I think there's like, I know I put in 3 drills to improve running efficiency, but I think there's a little bit more. The cadence, right? That's the first thing. So you want to get a metronome out, time or tap how many times your foot hits the ground per minute on your metronome app. Try and get that number to at least 180. Work on your single leg stance and your tripod foot positions, activating the glute and the core, and then the leg pull drill. All right, so that's the 3 drills that we're going to be doing to improve your running and reduce your injuries. Okay, so less vertical displacement and less shock through the joint. Okay, so let's see here. I'm going to pull up my camera here, and then we'll see if there's any questions in our chat room here. Let me know if we have any issues or problems or so the other thing too you could look at is what else? Pose method. That's the whole running method that we kind of touched on today. If you Google that, you get a lot more information. You're gonna get a metronome app, and there's also playlists that you could use online. Spotify has a playlist for runners. It's set at 180 beats per minute. The other thing too is that for training, once we're comfortable with that 180 beats or steps per minute, we could start to train at short spurts at a higher steps per minute, and then that makes the 180 much more comfortable. So I'll have people on the treadmill, and I'll have them go for about 30 seconds at 200 steps per minute or 210 really fast, and it changes. It really changes the way that your gait is. And if you do that for a while, your body gets used to that quick step over, that quick turnover, and then 180 steps per minute is a lot easier. Okay, so any questions for me? I'll give you the 30-second countdown if there's any other questions. Oh, you're welcome. Pull up my chat window here. All right. All right, so thank you everybody for joining me today. You could look for this session and many more on demand on any of the Better Spaces apps. I will be back August 29th, Tuesday, August 29th, on how to warm up and stretch for pickleball. You're going to learn the key moves to make sure your body is at its best when you're playing, so you can avoid aches, injuries, or pain. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me here at paul@par5pt.com or betterspace or team@betterspaces.com. Thank you for coming and enjoy your Tuesday. Bye-bye.